Now working day, and I give the floor to the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense, Colonel Viktoria Kushnir, and then we'll hear on Skype from the spokesman of the General Staff, Lieutenant Colonel Sergiy Danylenko. Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm glad to see you. Deputy Minister of Defense Petrov Mekhed at the moment takes part in the conference Security in Ukraine, Humanitarian Demining and the Danger of Explosive Remnants of War that started yesterday in Geneva, Switzerland. During the conference they will talk about the issue of the determining of the ways of providing Ukraine with help from the international community in finding out and diffusing mines, ammunition, and other explosive remnants of war. Yesterday, on the 27th of April, in the NATO headquarters in Brussels, the agreement was signed on the cooperation in the sphere of support between the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine and NATO organization on support and supply. It treats the cooperation of Ukraine with the alliance, in particular in the sphere of the work of the trust funds of NATO to support Ukraine in physical rehabilitation of military and the reformation of logistics and standardization system of the armed forces of Ukraine. The agreement opens broad opportunities for the participation of Ukraine in economically profitable multinational projects of the alliance on logistical provision of the troops and other related issues. Also recently in the headquarters of NATO, the memorandum on mutual understanding between the government of Ukraine and NATO organization on communication and information was signed concerning the issues of cooperation on consultations, management, communication, intelligence, monitoring and reconnaissance within the framework of the NATO program Partnership for Peace. The signing of this international agreement is a reflection of the efforts of NATO and its member states aimed at the large-scale support of the reform of the sector of security and defense in Ukraine according to the decisions adopted during the NATO summit in Wales in the autumn of last year. The memorandum provides for the number of practical projects on modernization of the system of management, command, and communication of the armed forces of Ukraine within the framework of the Trust Fund of NATO. The groups of civil and military cooperation of the armed forces of Ukraine are actively involved in providing humanitarian help to the residents of Donbass. Recently, the officers of this group have polled the representatives of local bodies of power, directors of educational establishments, in order to find out the number of children and people of older age, and also families with many children who live next to the demarcation line. This helps to find out how to solve urgent problems of people. One of these days, the groups of civil and military cooperation of the armed forces of Ukraine have provided humanitarian help to the residents of populated centers and along the demarcation line in the vicinity of Artemis, Dzerzhinsk, and some other districts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Also, they have delivered volunteer help to the military to the front line. This time they have handed over to the military powerful binoculars and warm things, and also children's drawings and different things made by the students of Transcarpathian schools with their own hands. The military units of the armed forces and brigades of the state enterprises have, over the last week, repaired 271 units of armaments and military vehicles. In general, starting from the beginning of the anti-terrorist operation, 23,087 pieces of armaments and military machinery were repaired, and 41 were modernized on state enterprises. The Ministry of Defense continues its work to bestow the status of the participant in combat action to the participants in the anti-terrorist operation. Such status was given to almost 21.5 thousand military and workers of the armed forces of Ukraine who have taken direct part in the anti-terrorist operation. Also, the Ministry of Defense is summing up the results of the fourth wave of mobilization that lasted from the 20th of January to the 19th of April. This measure was necessary to finish the completion of the military units and the rotation of personnel who were drafted during the first wave of partial mobilization in 2014. According to the surveys, the social portrait or profile of the mobilized military is like this. Average age 36 years. The level of education, more than half have secondary specialized or higher education. Almost 90% of them have previously served in the army. Every eighth of mobilized is a volunteer, and almost 90% of those who got summons have come to the military commissariats. As of the 27th of April, within the framework of the event Support the Ukrainian Army, the accounts of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine as a help to the military forces of Ukraine from legal and physical entities, legal entities and individuals have got 156,827,000 hryvnia, and from this amount over 3.5 million was collected in 2015. From this aggregate amount, almost 143 million hryvnia were money sent for the material and technical provision of the army, and the rest is meant to cover the expenditure for the medical provision of the armed forces of Ukraine. And with the help of calls to the single mobile number 565, almost 840,000 hryvnia was collected for the Ukrainian army. And I give the floor to the officer of the press center of the headquarters of anti-terrorist operation, Lieutenant Colonel Sergiy Danylenko, who will tell you about the events in the zone of the anti-terrorist operation. In the evening of the 28th of April, the situation in the zone of the anti-terrorist operation has again become sharper. Starting from 6 p.m. until the midnight, the illegal armed formations have 22 times shelled the positions of our troops along the demarcation line. And the criminals have again used heavy artillery and multiple rocket launchers, including aiming them at peaceful residents. In the vicinity of Avdiivka town, the bandit formations have opened fire against the positions of the anti-terrorist operation forces from multiple rocket launchers BM-21 Grad, and from 9 p.m. to 9:01 p.m. they have launched a package of Grads against to the settlement Novolaspa, Volnovakha district. Besides, the illegal armed formation have twice shelled our strongholds next to Piski and Opitne from 120mm mortar, and they have also used it in the vicinity of Diivka and Chermalik and next to the city of Shastya. The criminals have twice shelled the positions of the anti-terrorist operation forces from heavy artillery next to Avdiivka and once next to Opitne and Chermalik. Also, during the period, our units have detected the flights of 7 drones of enemy, mostly in the vicinity of Mariupol,